Nowadays, anything can be deemed a simulator, in inverted commas. You just slap on the generic word and boom, it's on sale. Luckily, our game today is not one of those. This is Total Reviews, the web show where we take a look at games of interest and see if they really are worth the price. In this, our first episode, we take a look at American Truck Simulator, thanks to Games Planet UK who have kindly given us a copy. Developed by SCS, this is the sister game to the extremely popular Euro Truck Simulator 2, which was released some years ago, but has been constantly updated to keep it fresh. Surprisingly, American Truck Simulator has the same minimum specs as ETS2, despite being a newer game. Needing only a 2.4 GHz dual-core processor, 4 GB of RAM, and the integrated Intel HD 4000 series graphics processor, SCS have attempted to cater for the widest market possible, showing that you do not need an amazing computer to enjoy yourselves on the wide American highways in a big rig. However, as mods come out, and they will come out in numbers, the system requirements will undoubtedly increase. Don't expect to be able to run this at a smooth 60 frames per second with maxed out settings with all those, and especially with the high-end mods. It's also interesting to note that in a way SCS seem to have gone full circle, as their first game, 18 Wheels of Steel, was also based around American trucks. The base game that is currently available spans 2 states, California and Nevada, with a number of cities in each state including Reno, Los Angeles and San Francisco. At the time of this review being made, SCS are working on finishing off the state of Arizona, which will be the first DLC. Happily though, this expansion is set to be free, whilst others have been hinted at being both paid and free as and when they come out. I'd imagine the next to be Texas, New Mexico or perhaps Oregon, as has been hinted by SCS CEO Pavel Sabor. At the moment, the truck list was somewhat disappointing, with only 2 models available, the Peterbilt 579 and the Kenworth T680. However, this again is set to expand too, with the Peterbilt 389 and the Kenworth W900, as well as a license with Volvo, since they already have Volvo in Euro Truck Simulator 2. Hopefully SCS will be able to build upon that and get themselves up quite a solid lineup in the future. As I got into American Truck Simulator for the first time, I found myself surrounded by a very familiar interface, due to all my time I spent playing Euro Truck Simulator. Nothing seems to have changed with the setup, and getting my Logitech G27 wheel working perfectly with all buttons set was a very simple task. The first change I did notice though, well, barring the fact that the Mac was American and the logo, was the music. SCS have gone and remixed all their tracks to have a very American vibe to them, and to be honest, it works pretty well. Jumping into my first job, I was surprised that it actually made sense. Now, unlike its sister game, American Truck Simulator tends to have cargo transported from a logical place to a realistic destination. So, you won't be carrying 22,000 pounds of gravel from a supermarket to a car dealership. That just doesn't work, and so they've got rid of it. I was struck by the lovely modelling and texturing of the American cities as I passed through them. The roads, where obviously you spend 99% of your time, were no longer in pristine condition but were dirty, used and cracked, especially the old American highways. The interstates were long and as straight as you could get, while the single carriageway highways stretched off into the distance, giving you almost tunnel vision as you drove. And though the idea of a truck sim sounds quite silly and boring, ETS2 appealed to many people, including myself, for reasons that really cannot be explained. American Truck Simulator has that same feeling that it just shouldn't work, but then you have a tumbleweed rolling out in front of you and you appreciate the work that SCS have put into it and have put into keeping you alert while you're driving, giving you all these little bits and bobs that you can really enjoy. For example, whilst I was driving, I came across fighter jets flying over, helicopters in San Francisco. There was a crop duster. I remember seeing a crop duster, dusting its crops, and it's actually got the spray coming out the underside of the actual plane, the pesticides, which, all these little bits and bobs, and you look at it and you think, oh yeah, this is nice. I want to keep driving in it, and I think that's just how it works. And you couple that with the graphics correction filters, and you've got a game where everything looks pretty American, to be very honest. The cities are very different from what I was used to in ETS. Instead of being generic blocks, which were very, very boring, let's be honest, they are very, very boring, these cities seem to have unique little quirks. So there's a massive archway as you enter Bakersfield. San Francisco is very hilly, there's long roads of Reno, and you tend to drive straight through many of the smaller towns and cities as opposed to actually visiting them only for a drop-off pickup. So that makes it seem far more natural, and to be honest, the gameplay is a lot better because of it. Driving the trucks, well, that wasn't that much of a different experience from what I'm used to, except for the fact that they were bigger, they were longer, and I could turn right at a red signal, but only as I found out if I used my indicator. Physics wise, they don't feel too different in style from their European counterparts in the sense that they are accurate but only to a degree. Suspension is the biggest letdown there, but I'm pretty certain a realistic physics mod will be out very quickly, meaning driving will become very different and a whole lot better. It's just a shame that a physics setup like this is not available in the base game. Speed cameras is something that you do have to be aware of. Instead of having fixed cameras where you can memorize locations of, again as it was in the sister game, there seem to be dynamic police patrols, and they'll happily give you a whopping $1,000 ticket if they catch you speeding. It's not ideal at the start of a game, I'll tell you that now. Red light offences also seem to vary from junction to junction, which is something new, so this means you really do have to drive far more carefully than you normally would do. And of course, you've also got yourself a trailer, which means that if you're used to racing games, it's going to be very, very different. You're going to be going a lot slower, and you've got an articulation point that you have to worry about. Speaking of articulation points and driving carefully, the GPS has a habit of occasionally taking you down the roads of the narrowest possible dimension, meaning you really do have to watch your trailer as you navigate your way through these windy roads up and down hills past what looks very convincingly like someone's backyard. I mean, I can't imagine them being too happy if big rigs driving past became an everyday occurrence in real life, but it does sort of break up some of the monotone nature of American Truck Simulator. In fact, the monotone nature of truck simulators, full stop, and having things like this does break it up. The AI, that works differently as well. Not the greatest ever, but then again, what game or simulator does have really, really good AI? It's very hard to get AI for something like this working properly. The great thing is that it seems to be a constantly evolving process with SCS, and American Truck Simulator does show an evolution over what was currently available. They seem pretty smart, and they do pay attention to indicators, or turn signals as those of you in America will know them, and I swear I could flash my lights to give them way, but then again I do that in ETS 2 and I never really know if it actually works. However, they still have their glitches. I noticed a small traffic accident on a road off the Pacific Coast Highway towards Malibu, and it seemed to back up traffic all the way down the highway. Unfortunately, the car in question didn't move, so the traffic just stayed there, and I watched it for a very, very long time. On top of that, they are still extremely unforgiving when it comes to joining a primary road, which means that's a big problem, because if you're on an uphill climb, or even if you're on a downhill, and you have to shave off speed trying to get onto an interstate, in a lorry you can't build that speed back up. It's very, very difficult. So you're coming onto the road, and yes, you do have to yield, that is true. But if you were in real life, everyone would try and move over. Everyone would try and move over as quickly as they could to let you in. That's how it works. If they don't, they're idiots. You know, if someone just doesn't do that, then they're not being very courteous on the road. Unfortunately, in American Truck Simulator, you have some of the rudest drivers that you're ever going to meet. They do not give you way. And if you slow down to a dead stop, good luck trying to get onto the motorway, because that is going to be pretty difficult. Most of the time, you're just going to have to force your way out if you can't. And then, once you've done your journey and you've come across all these quirks and gone through these nice cities and you reach your destination, SCS have implemented this new parking system in which you can sort of pick up you can just pick whether you want to dump your cargo where it is, or you drive it to a simple drop-off point, or go all out and squeeze it into a narrow gap. And they give you differing levels of experience. Now this, I think, is really, really good, because it means for those people who are new to the truck simulation series, they've got something that they can play with. They can say, okay, on my first job, I don't want to park the trailer, I just want to get used to driving, stuff like that. Later on, once they get a few levels in, done a few jobs, they're like, yeah, okay, let me try parking up a bit. And then as they become more experienced in driving the lorries, they will be like, alright, let's do this. Let's go for a full-on park. Let's see if we can get into a properly narrow gap. So I think that's a really, really good addition to the game. I want to see that in Euro Truck Simulator 2, that's for sure. And overall, I'm going to give this a 75 out of 100 or a B+. It's another solid simulation experience from SCS, but the lack of content at this time stops me from giving it a higher score. I would have liked to see better physics, as I mentioned, but it's not that bad, as they do have to cater to the masses. And like I said, the mods will be out, and you can pick and choose what you want there. But if SCS do continue with updates as they have done tirelessly with ETS2, then I can see this becoming a very strong game with a very strong following. And if you already own ETS2 and you're looking for a familiar style in a new environment, then this is for you. Similarly, if you love big rigs, you're not going to find a game more likable. But if you want variety, ETS2 is still the one for you, at least until American Truck Simulator is built up with a bunch of content. Nevertheless, for its reasonable price, it's definitely worth picking up if you want something different. And if you purchase it from the link in the description box, you'll be able to get it up for a discounted rate, and support us here at AD Studios thanks to our friends at Games Planet, whom once again I have to thank for giving us a copy of this to review. Let's see what the future of American Truck Simulator holds.